well, let me address this. So it says, Jackie, how are you defining freedom in this context? That's a great question. I define freedom in a lot of different ways. The first is obvious with food. And for me, I never had what I call the freedom to eat. I was always, since probably the age of 12 or 13, was always on a diet. And that meant I wasn't free to eat just anything. I was only free to eat on the diet or off the diet. And it's crazy because I ate all kinds of stuff. And obviously by gaining weight, I was eating things that were not healthy for me, or I was eating way too much. Like I share in the book that I used to love cereal and I would just eat cereal out of the box. But I was, and what we're talking about here, actually, the first 2 chapters of the book are awareness and acceptance. And I was totally unaware. And so I would eat to the point of being just stuffed. And where that came from, actually, I understand, is when I was young, when I was born, my brother had wanted a baby sister, and I just missed Christmas, or Christmas, and I missed Christmas by 3 days. And so I was wanted, and I was loved and accepted, and I was the apple of my father's eye, and he took me with him everywhere. And that was up until the time I was like 5 or 6 years old or something. And then things began to change dramatically. I think it was when I was, 7 or 8 years old, and I felt abandoned. And what had happened was he started drinking. He worked at a brewery, and one of the perks at the brewery was getting all the fresh beer that you wanted, which he took advantage of that. And then he would stop at the tavern on the way home. And he was a very violent drunk and very angry. And he just changed. So he went from this loving father that paid attention to me to, he was never abusive towards me, but he was abusive towards my mother, and verbally and physically, and no one talked about it. And during that time, I was in middle school, I guess, when I was around 12 years old. I just remember being starving all the time. And I had money for lunch, but it was never enough. And I would tiptoe into his bedroom after he would pass out from one of his rants after he came home from work. And it was dark in the room, and he had a coin purse on the desktop. And I would sneak in there and steal quarters. And my heart would be pounding the whole time I was walking in there because I was stealing. And I was so hoping he wasn't going to wake up. And what I didn't realize at the time, because no one talked about it, it was very confusing, and that I was just really feeding this love, that I needed, that I wasn't getting. And food for me was comfort, especially back then. And this emptiness that I felt, it wasn't filled by God, because even I would not let God in, because I didn't think that God loved me either. I thought God was so disappointed in me. So the freedom I know now is why I was eating at that particular time. Then later on in my life, it turned into more, not that I was an alcoholic, but I would drink to change my state. And then when I drank, your inhibitions get lowered, and then I would eat more. And so this freedom was never to just eat what I wanted, and now I'm able to do that. And if I want to go and eat a whole chocolate cake, I can do that. I don't want to do that because it's not healthy for me. But I used to go to a restaurant and I think, oh, I can't eat anything on this. And really insane was if I was on one of, say, a low carb diet, because at least on an Atkins or something, you kind of eat everything that you want as far as whether it's protein or fat, which worked well with me because then I could eat more. But I remember even going to church and it'd be communion. And I would think, oh, great. I have to have the grape juice and the little bread, and I'm not supposed to have any carbs for communion. I mean, so I felt like I'd blown my diet for taking communion that day. So it was more of a oppressive control that food seemed to have over me. And then as far as freedom, part of my problem was because I didn't find my voice. I couldn't express my voice at home with my father and with his outbursts. And it wasn't until, if you read in my book, when I say my choir director said 5 words to me that changed everything. And I had started to confide in a friend and kind of telling her what was going on with me. And she said, have you heard of codependency? And I said, no. And she said, you need to get this book, Codependent No More. And I went to the bookstore and looked at it. I was leafing through it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me, this is me, this is me. I think I highlighted like 80% of the book. But I was not aware of my father's alcoholism, his effect on me. I thought it was his problem. I didn't think it was my problem because I wasn't an alcoholic. But the truth is, I was a workaholic. I would use food and alcohol to numb my state. I was abusive to myself because I was always beating myself up all the time. And I don't do that anymore. I'm free from that. I'm free from the judgment. I mean, I used to step on the scale. The scale was my judge and jury. If I gained weight, then I would go on a binge. If I lost weight, I would go on a binge. I mean, it was this judging all the time. And all of that is gone. And they say in recovery movements, to turn things over to a higher power. It's part of this 12-step program. And it's really been through my relationship with God and spending time with God in meditation in particular, and quieting my mind and allowing God to love me. And I don't know, it's almost a miracle. I think this surrender, and the surrender word in our culture is not popular, because surrender means you're losing, or you're waving the flag and giving up. It is giving up, but it's giving up the struggle. It's not giving up. It's surrendering and just finally just saying, God, I can't do this on my own. I just can't. And miracles happen when that happens. I wanted to see this comment here. I'm so glad. Yeah, we are in bondage, and it's our own bondage. So I want to move on because I think it's about almost 10:30, and I hope that explain what freedom means to me, and what I want it to mean for you is that you have the freedom to eat what you want and not feel guilt or shame or anything around that, that you choose to eat healthy because you love yourself and you care about yourself and you want to nurture yourself, and that you're free to let go of these limiting beliefs and these limiting thoughts, because I've heard it said that the only difference between God and good is that good has an extra O. So those thoughts that we have, if they're not good, they're not from God.